Hey guys, it's Alexandra from EyeLoveKnots.com and yarncraftsandcoffee.com. Today I'm going to show you how to make a really easy half double crochet washcloth. I'm going to have instructions for multiple sizes and two options: without a hanging loop, just as a square, and with a hanging loop. Drop me a comment below and let me know which one is your favorite. I would love to know. We're going to be working with half double crochets in the washcloth itself. The border is a simple round of single crochet. This is part of the 2024 mystery crochet along that I'm hosting on my EyeLoveKnots blog. And this is the first design. So you can pop down into the description box below and click on the link that will take you over to get the details for the crochet along. And you'll also find the links in there to other crochet patterns and tutorials from the crochet along. I do have instructions for two different weights of yarn. In this tutorial, I'm going to be providing instructions for working with a sport weight fine number 2 weight yarn. That's this light blue one right here. I am using a new to me yarn called Queensland Cotton Fine. There's also a Coastal Cotton, which is a number 4 weight yarn. This is the number 2 weight yarn. It's 100% cotton, it is color fast, it comes in tons of colors, and I've really been enjoying working with it. I haven't worked with this weight of yarn before for washcloths, so I'm going to be working this into my rotation and updating some of my other designs, since I know a lot of you like to work with lighter weight yarns. I'm also going to be carrying this yarn in my Yarn Crafts and Coffee shop, both online and in person, which is located inside America's Antique Mall in Melbourne, Florida. Together with this lighter weight yarn, you're going to want to have a G6 4.25mm crochet hook. Now, this is my preferred hook for working with lighter yarns like this, but feel free to go down to a 4mm, a 3.75mm, 3.5mm, whichever is your preferred hook for working with the lighter yarn. I will provide instructions for working the different sizes with this crochet hook, so if you don't mind if the finished size is a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, then definitely feel free to change out your hook size. I will say that the 4.25mm produced a fabric with really great drape, but the stitches are not as tight as I usually like them to be. And I did initially intend to go with the 3.75, but I just really like working with this hook. I'm still really happy with my washcloth. Let's talk about gauge really quickly. Gauge is not essential for this project. If you don't mind if the finished washcloth is a little bit smaller or a little bit larger, then you don't need to worry about measuring. Gauge is only essential if you want your finished washcloths to come out to the exact same size as mine. You're going to find the written instructions linked in the description box below. I will provide them here in slides for you as well. Let's go ahead and get started. We're going to start with a slip knot, so I've pulled the yarn over my fingers here. I'm going to wrap it around my index finger 2 times and then hold tension down here with my thumb and my middle finger. Pull the loop on the left up over the other one but not off my finger. Then I'll pull the one on the left up over the other one and off my finger. Grab my crochet hook, insert it into the loop on my finger and pull it off. I'll hold the working yarn in my right hand, short tail in my left. I'm going to pull that so this knot goes to normal tension. We're going to begin with a chain. To chain, we yarn over and pull through the loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. Yarn over, pull through the loop on our hook. Each time we do that, we get one of these V shapes. 1, 2, 3 chains. We don't count the loop that's on our hook. I'm going to go ahead and put up a chart that shows how many chains you're going to want to have depending on the size that you're working. Now that we have our chain complete, we're going to half double crochet into the 3rd chain from the hook. Again, we don't count the loop that's on our hook. 1, 2, 3 chains. In the center of that chain, we're going to work our first half double crochet, yarn over, insert your hook into that stitch, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook into the center of the next chain, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Yarn over, insert your hook into the center of the next chain, yarn over and pull through, 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through all 3 loops. Right now we have 3 half double crochets complete that we've worked together. You can look to the top of those and see that V shape there. That's how you can count them really easily. Over here where we started, we skipped a couple chains and worked into the 3rd one. Those skipped chains there are also going to count as a stitch. So even though we worked 3 half double crochets, we add that as a stitch and we have 4 stitches in total. Continue half double crocheting into each chain all the way across to the end. Here I've reached the end and I have all my stitches complete. The total amount of stitches that you're going to have for this row is going to be 1 less than what you started with when you chained. For row 2, we're going to chain 1 and turn. We're going to half double crochet into this very first stitch and each stitch all the way across. Yarn over, insert your hook right into the center of that stitch, picking up both loops of the V shape at the top. Then complete your half double crochet. And continue half double crocheting into each stitch. At the end, we are going to work our last stitch into that beginning chain that we skipped. So once I get there, we'll do that together. Here at the end, it looks like we've completed our row, but we actually have 1 more stitch left to work into, and that's going to be the beginning chain, where we skipped those 2 stitches and worked into the 3rd one. So the very next stitch that you're going to see here is a chain, and you're going to see the back bump there from the back of the chain. Then right underneath that is going to be the 2nd chain, and the 3rd chain is where that first half double crochet is worked. So that first chain there, the next stitch that's available to work into, that's where we're going to half double crochet. So you're going to insert right into the center of that chain and complete your half double crochet. And now row 2 is complete. And the shaping is off a little bit right here, but as you continue working, that's going to even out. All the remaining rows are going to be worked the same. You're going to start with a chain 1 and turn, and then you're going to half double crochet into that very first stitch and half double crochet into each stitch all the way across. When you get to the end, you'll work into a half double crochet the same as all the rest of the stitches. And for all these rows, you're going to have the same number of stitches that you had here in row 1, which is just 1 stitch less than the number of chains that you created. I have 5 rows complete here. To count your rows, you're going to look for the texture to differentiate between them. Down here at the bottom, the stitches look prettier and more defined. That's going to be the right side or the front side. Above that for row 2, the stitches are more textured, they're less defined. That's going to be the wrong side or the back side. Above that, you'll see the pretty side again, and above that, you'll see the textured side. You'll use this to help you with counting the rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Or the further I get, I count by 2s, and I just look for that raised up textured row, and I'll count 2, 4, 6, and so on. I'm going to put up a chart that's going to show how many rows in total you're going to need depending on the size that you're working. Now that I have all my rows complete, it's time to add a border. I'm going to show you how to add a hanging loop if you'd like to have one of those. If you don't, I'll show you a different way that you can just have a solid border all the way around. So if you just want a regular border, I'm going to show you how to do single crochet, but you could change that up and do a different stitch pattern. I'm also just going to show you one round, but if you want to add additional rounds so you can make your washcloth bigger or add stripes or do fun edging, you can do that too. I like to work my borders from the right side. When you're working in half double crochet, you turn at the end of each row, so both sides look exactly the same. You can decide which one you want to be the right side. Chain 1 and turn. In this very first stitch, we're going to work 1 single crochet. Insert your hook into that stitch, picking up both loops, yarn over, pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert your hook into the next stitch, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on your hook, yarn over and pull through both loops. So that right there gives us 3 single crochets, and they have the same V shape here at the top. We're going to continue working single crochets all the way across the top here until we get to the very last stitch. We're going to start with a chain 6. And then we're going to be slip stitching into that very last stitch underneath both loops of that last stitch, and that's going to create a ring that we can work into. So I'm moving to the left of my chain, and I'm going to bring my hook right into that stitch there. Then I'm going to yarn over, pull through that stitch, and pull through the loop that's on my hook. That completes a slip stitch. And now we have that ring here that we can work into. I'm going to chain 1 and turn. And I'm going to work 10 single crochets into the center hole. I'm going to insert my hook right into the center hole, picking up the chains on my hook. And then yarn over, pull through. There are 2 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert my hook into the center ring. Yarn over and pull through, 2 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through both loops. Insert my hook into the center ring, yarn over and pull through, 2 loops, yarn over, pull through both loops. So this gives us 3 single crochets here. They each have the same V shape at the top. And I'm going to continue working into the center ring until I have 10 single crochets in total. If you reach a point where you're running out of space, hold on to the fabric in your left hand and pull the stitches down in your right, and they'll slide down that chain, making room for you. After you have all your single crochets finished, we're going to skip the very first stitch here, which is the one that you slip stitched to. And in the next stitch, we're going to single crochet. And now we'll continue single crocheting into each stitch here along the top until we get to the very last one, and then we're going to increase in there. But now the loop is secured to the washcloth. Once we make it all the way back around, we'll slip stitch join to that loop. Now I've made it to the very last stitch here. I've single crocheted into all those stitches along the top, and we need to decide how we want our corners to look. There's a couple different ways depending if you like rounded corners or if you like squared corners. So number 1, we need to increase in this last stitch and in each corner stitch. That means work multiple stitches in there so that it will lay flat. So if you like a rounded look, you can work 3 single crochets in here, or you can work a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. If you like a more squared look, you can work a single crochet, half double crochet, single crochet in there, or you could work a single crochet, chain 2, single crochet. So decide what kind of corner you want, rounded or squared, and you can try it out, and then if you don't like it, just frog it back. I'm going to do a single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. I'm just going to go for a rounded corner here. But right now we have 3 stitches in the corner, as the chain counts as one of those stitches. And I'm going to repeat this in each corner outside of the hanging loop. Now I'm going to single crochet evenly down the side here, and when we work down the side and up the side, they're going to be worked similar to each other. So the rule for working in half double crochet rows is 3 stitches per 2 rows. So I'm going to come down here for a moment where you see the wrong side and the right side. You're going to evenly work all the way down the same way, but looking here at the right side, it's really easy to see that last stitch here. It has like a long leg and then a short leg and then a leg that swoops over. Right in the center of that stitch, along the edge, is where you're going to work 1 stitch. And then going into the wrong side here, it just looks like a hole. Those are the 2 that are going to stick out the most to you. And that's where you're going to put 1 stitch in the hole and 1 stitch in the side edge of that V. And then since we need 3 stitches per 2 rows, we know we need to work 1 in the center of those. And there's a little stitch right there too, but sometimes the one in the center is a little bit harder to see, so I always look for that hole and for that V shape. So as you go along, you'll see that if you break down the stitches into 2 rows, at the top we just finished working into that hole, then we have that stitch in the middle, and then that V shape underneath it. Then we start over. The hole, the stitch in the middle, and then the V shape. The other side looks a little bit differently because we're looking at the back side of all that, but you work it the same exact way. So I like to keep track as I'm going. I just make sure I count 3 stitches in my head as I go along, and then I'll know that I didn't add or take away any stitches. So we've just worked into that hole at the top, and now we're going to work into that stitch in the center. Insert right into the center of that little tiny hole that you see. That's going to be right underneath the top leg and right above the bottom leg that you see in there, right in the center of that. Then complete your single crochet. Then you insert right into the center of that V shape, breaking it in half. You're going to notice when you work these stitches that you have 2 loops on your hook. That's what I recommend for the most secure hold, so it doesn't pull your fabric out and create any holes on the sides. And complete your single crochet. That completes the 3rd stitch there for those 2 rows. Now we start over again. We have that hole. We'll insert right in the center of it. Complete a single crochet. The stitch in the middle, right into that little hole. Breaking the stitch in half always. Complete your single crochet. And then into the center of the V shape. And that completes the next set of 3 stitches for those 2 rows. And you're going to continue working that way all the way down. I always recommend working this way where we're breaking the stitches in half to work as close to the side edge as possible, as opposed to working in between the stitches, because that usually creates a lacy pattern on the edge. And working this way into the side edge, it hides it a little bit better. So into that hole, into the middle stitch there in that little hole, and into the V stitch. Alright, continue working all the way down the side until you get to the end. Here towards the bottom I have one more stitch to complete my set of 3. And then I've reached the last stitch, which is attached to my beginning tail end here. That's one of the corners where we need to increase the same way as we did up here. Whichever pattern you picked for that one, you'll repeat it here. So I did single crochet, chain 1, single crochet. And if that stitch opens up for you, it's because the slip knot is not secured. So you could just hold on to that knot in between your fingers and pull the tail end, and it'll close that back up. And we'll secure that in a moment when we weave in our ends. I'm going to now work on the opposite side of the foundation chain into each one of those chains, very similarly to how I did in the beginning. Just inserting right into the center of that stitch and then completing my single crochet. right in the center of the next stitch and complete my single crochet. And each one of these are outlined pretty similar to how it is when you work the top of the border as well. Just follow all the stitches there along the bottom all the way until you get to the very end, and then we're going to increase as well. Here I've worked all the way across, all the way to the end. Now I've worked one stitch there in that last stitch, but this is actually where I need to increase. So this is where the beginning chain is. And that's why it looks differently than the other side. This is where we chained all the way across, and then we skipped a couple chains and started working backwards. So these are the skip chains. Down here where I've worked the last stitch is one of those chains, and then above it, which has come over to the side, that's another one of the chains. So here in the last stitch that's on the bottom is where I'm going to increase. So I've worked one single crochet in there. I'm going to complete that by working a chain 1 and one more single crochet into the same exact stitch. And now that corner is complete, and I'm going to rotate to work up the side of the washcloth now. And as I mentioned before, it's going to look a little different because we're looking at the back side of these rows from where we turned. And that row in the middle looks a little bit more complicated because it has 2 little holes. Don't let that confuse you. Look for those 2 big anchor stitches, the V-like shape at the end of one row. On this side, it's from the wrong side. And then going on to the right side row above it, you have that hole. Then you know you have 1 stitch in that hole, 1 stitch in that V shape, and you need to put 1 stitch in the center of those. So I'm going to come down here real quick, and I'm going to look for those anchor stitches. I see here's the hole, and I see here's the back of the V shape. And I have 1 stitch here that's going to go in the center. So I'm going to go ahead and add that stitch there. It's the most natural next stitch for you to go to. It's actually the chain that we talked about. And now you can start in pattern. In the center of that V shape there, working along the side edge the same as before. Then into that middle stitch. And sometimes we don't get 2 loops on our hook, so you can push through that small hole there at the top and you'll just have the 1 loop on your hook and complete your stitch. But when we work the next stitch here in the hole, that does pick up 2 loops. And that's going to secure our stitches so that we're not pulling the fabric up here where it's only worked into 1 loop. Otherwise, if we worked all of them into that 1 loop, it would separate that fabric there. Now we'll begin the pattern again, right into the center of the V shape. In the middle, this time just picking up that 1 loop, but that's okay. And then into the hole above it. And you'll continue in this process all the way up until you get to the end and you finish working as naturally as possible into these stitches. We're going to go ahead and slip stitch join. Just follow the edge all the way up. Here I've just completed the last stitch into a hole. I have 1 V shape above it. I'm going to skip that stitch and I'm going to slip stitch join to the first single crochet of the hanging loop. So you're going to see the chains underneath it. It's going to look a little twisted. You want to look above that to where you see a complete V shape. That's the first stitch. Right underneath both loops, yarn over, pull through that stitch and through the loop that's on our hook, and that's going to complete our round. And we're skipping this last stitch because the slip stitch will take the space of a stitch here and we want the hanging loop to come closer to the body. Now we're just going to fasten off here with the tail end long enough we can comfortably weave in. I'm going to come here to where the loop is still on my hook, pull up on it to break it, then insert into that same stitch from the back to the front, yarn over with that tail end and just pull it to the back. That way it's on the back side for weaving. And now I'm going to grab my tapestry needle and weave in my ends. Now that I've made it all the way around, I have one more stitch here to work into that looks like the V shape. I'm going to insert right in the center of that stitch. And now I've come back to the beginning. In that same stitch where I worked the first single crochet, I'm going to insert my hook there, and I'm going to work one more single crochet in here. And in place of the chain that we've done on all our other corners, we're going to slip stitch join to the first stitch. Insert underneath both loops of the first single crochet, yarn over, pull through that stitch, and then through the loop that's on your hook. And now this corner increase is complete. I'm going to go ahead and fasten off here with the tail end long enough I can comfortably weave in. Come back to this loop here on my hook, pull up on it to break it. Then I like to bring it to the wrong side. So I'm going to insert from the back to the front into that same stitch that I slip stitched to, yarn over, and pull that tail end to the back. Now I'll grab my tapestry needle and weave in my ends. If you do not put a hanging loop on your washcloth, the tail end from where you fastened off is going to be weaved in the same exact way as the initial tail end down at the bottom. And if you're going to do the hanging loop, then I'm going to show you that here. After I get this one put in, I'm going to do the initial tail end. So it'll get you through for either option. I'm going to get this threaded into my tapestry needle. Now we're going to want to make sure that we're working vertically down the bulkiness of the border there. Instead of picking up the whole entire stitch on my needle when I enter and exit, I'm going to bring my needle through the center of the stitch to break it in half, and that's going to help to capture my yarn better. Let me give a tug to this last stitch. I'm going to go over here to the left, break this stitch in half, and then I'm going to run vertically here underneath several stitches. And in this last stitch here, I'm going to break it in half. This is going to help capture my yarn better so I don't have to worry about it pulling out. Push the needle through, hold onto the fabric in between my fingers, pull it, and then give it a tug. Then I'm going to come back and use my fingers to manipulate the fabric if I need to, if it has bunched up. I want it to lay naturally. And I don't want it to distort any of my stitches, so I'm going to flip it around and make sure that where I joined, it looks okay. Then I'm going to rotate this so I can work back in the same direction, insert into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half, run back up through several of those same stitches, and break the last stitch in half when I exit. Hold on to the stitches in between my fingers, pull the needle through, give it a tug, and then come back and manipulate the fabric if I need to, if the work has bunched up. And I like to do 3 passes, that's my magic number. But if you feel comfortable after 2, you can fasten off. If you feel like you need to work a 4th one, go ahead and do it. Into a nearby stitch, breaking it in half. Right through the stitch next to it, and then up through several of those same stitches. Break the last stitch in half. Hold on to the fabric, pull through, give it a tug, manipulate the fabric. And now I'm ready to fasten off. Now I'm going to do the same thing down here with the initial tail end. Right now my tail end is down here at the bottom. I'm going to bring it around and then over here to where the border is so that I can hide it in the bulkiness there. So I'm just going into the stitch next to it on the left, breaking that stitch in half, pushing through those stitches diagonally, I'm holding on in between my fingers. Manipulate the fabric if you need to, and now I can start the process. 3 passes. I'm going to weave vertically in the bulkiness there, breaking the last stitch and the first stitch in half. And now this washcloth is ready to use. You have the hanging loop here. You can hang it up, or I still need to weave in the ends on this one, but you could have it here without the hanging loop and you could just drape it over or fold it in half, or you could do a mixture. You could have a couple without the loop and a couple with the loop. Drop me a comment below and let me know. Do you prefer yours to be with a hanging loop or without the hanging loop? Make sure to pop down into the description box to get the link to the crochet along, as well as links to other washcloth crochet patterns and tutorials. If you enjoyed this tutorial, it would help me out a ton if you would smash that like button to let YouTube know that you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel while you're there, and I'll catch you in the next one.